Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Randy Venny, and I'll be presenting along with Julia Evgy for this afternoon session of Get Google Organized. A couple of housekeeping items before we get underway here. First, this session is being recorded, and we're doing that so we can provide you with a video that we can, or that you can go back and pause and rewind and review today's content at your own pace. We ask that you keep your microphone muted. To do that, move your mouse towards the bottom center of the screen. You'll see three buttons. The button on the left is the microphone button. It should be red, indicating your microphone is off. We ask that you keep your microphone muted during the entire session as we have a large number of participants. Unfortunately, we can't have any verbal interactions that way. If you do have a question, once we get started, you can type that into the chat. You'll find the chat in the upper right part of the screen. It's a white button with a gray text box. And you can just type your question in there once we get going. Speaking of the chat, if you have not already done so, please type your first and last name and hit enter into the chat. That is how Julia and I will be recording attendance for this afternoon session. We'll check you off in my learning plan and make sure you get credit for today's professional learning. And finally, before we get going here, we'd just like to thank you again for attending. Today we will demonstrate some of the ways to get digitally organized using G Suite apps. This session is a combination of tutorials and tips. We hope that by showing you the how-to, as well as giving examples, you'll be able to see the benefits of using these Google tools. So here's kind of the rundown for today. I'm going to start by presenting some organization tips in Google Drive. Then I'll be doing some tips in regards to Gmail. Then I'm going to turn it over to Julia, who will show you a very cool app called Google Keep. And then she's also going to show you some organizational ideas that exist within Google Sheets. Again, if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat. And of course, we'll have time for a Q&A at the end. So without any further ado, I'm going to stop presenting by beginning of the session GIF and switch over to a different account here. All right, so what you should be seeing right now is the generic Tech Integrators Gmail account, and this exists for multiple reasons, one of which is that we use it for training purposes like this. So I am going to go actually into the Google Drive for the Tech Integrators account, and the reason I do this one is just because it's less cluttered than my Drive. Even though I have some good organizational ideas, there's still a lot of things in the Google Drive. So here we are in the Google Drive for the Tech Integrator account. And you can see there's some files here. There's some folders listed across the top. I can also expand my list of folders here on the left side. The folders is obviously one step for organization, probably the first step, and then we'll go a little deeper. So for those who may not be familiar, I'm going to demonstrate quickly how to create a folder in your Google Drive. To do that, you go up here to the upper left part of your screen and click on the button that says New, and then click on the button that says Folder. It's going to ask you to give it a name, so I'm going to create one called Math. And then I'm going to make one more just for demonstration purposes, and we'll call this one Reading. So you can see both of those folders have been added to my list, both on the left and across the top. They're plugged in alphabetically, so they're easy to find. I'm going to show you a couple ways to use those folders to make them even easier to find. And the first of which is giving the folder a color. To do this, it's very simple. You just have to right-click on the folder. And if you are not using a mouse, you can do a right-click on your HP computer by clicking the mouse with two fingers that are kind of stuck together. So if I right-click on here, you'll see a menu appear, and I can look down for the color palette. And I can pick one of a small handful of colors that Google makes available to me. I'll pick orange, let's see, for this one. And I'll do the same for reading. Again, I just right-click, move down to where it says change color, and then pick a color. So there you can see the color of the folder has changed. It makes it stand out a little bit. The color also has changed in this list on the left. Again, making it more visible for those folders you frequently access. There's another way that you can make your folder stand out a little more, and that's by giving it a name. And I don't mean just a special name. I mean, you put an emoji in the name. And to do that, excuse me, again, I will right-click on the folder, and this time I'm going to go down to where it says Rename. When I click on Rename, I'm going to move my cursor over to the beginning of the word math. And to add an emoji to text like this, and this is a Windows trick. If you're using a Mac or some other device, you may have to do a Google search to find how to execute this on your computer, but on the Windows machines, I'm going to hold down the Windows button, which is right below the letter Z, and press the period. And that brings up this menu of emojis. And since this is a math one, I'm actually going to click on the magnifying glass here and type the word math, and we'll see what comes up. So you can see there's two scientists, it looks like, and then some math symbols. I'll pick this division symbol. And for whatever reason, when I do this in Google Drive, it makes me do it twice. There we go. And so now it's put that division symbol in front of the word math. So when I hit OK, you can see the division symbol is in front of the word math, but it also moved that folder to the top of the list. And that is because alphabetically speaking, numbers come before letters and symbols like emojis come even before numbers. So right now, alphabetically, that is the first folder. Again, much easier to find when it's at the top of the list. I'll demonstrate that skill again in the reading folder. So I right click on the folder, move down to where it says rename. I have to move my mouse to the beginning of the list. And then I need to press the Windows button and the period, brings up my folder. And again, I'll click on the magnifying glass to search for something. Type the word read, it comes up with that kind of book. I'm going to type the word book. There we go. So let's go with this stack of books here. And I hit OK. The emoji isn't that obvious in this mode. You know, it looks kind of small. But again, it moved that folder right to the top of the list, making it much easier to find. So that's one way to make folders a little more accessible to you. There is a way to make just individual files more accessible to you, and that's to give them a star. And I'll show you what I mean. Let's open this picture of Frosty the Snowman saying happy birthday here. When I open this file, you can see up here in the upper left part of the screen, there's the name of the file, and then there's this star next to it. And when I click the star, it turns yellow, indicating that I've starred the file. I'm going to close this real quick and show you what that means. What that means is I've made this a file that I want to more easily find. And if I looked on the left side of my drive here, you'll see there's this section called starred. And when I do that, it brings up only the full files that I have given a star to. That is something that you definitely want to use if you want to find a file more frequently. And what's nice about this is it's temporary. I can take the star off. So like if I'm only using this during a snowman project that we're doing in January, I can star the file for that time when I'm using it, and then remove the star when I am done. And I'll demonstrate that. You don't have to open the file to do this either. I just did that to show you where the star is. So let's say I want to star this Tech Integrator logo here. All I have to do is right click on the file. I look for this star. It says add to starred. And you can see it put that into the star folder. If I'm done using this in a frequent manner and I want to unstar the item, again, I can just right click on it. And this time it says remove from starred, and it disappears. I'll do that for both of these files. So the star is just a great way to use the ability to easily find a frequently accessed file. It doesn't make sense to use the star in a lot of things, just because then you're cluttering up the starred folder instead of your regular Google Drive. So those are two methods for organization, but Google has actually added a much better method within the last year, and that is called the priority workspace. And to get there, you'll see right now my mouse is on my drive, but right above that is the word priority. And when I click on priority, it brings me to the priority workspace. And right now I have none in here because I want to make it easy for demonstration purposes. But what the priority workspace is a place where you can keep and group files. So like, for example, when I used to teach in an IB school, we had 6 units of inquiry. I might create a workspace for each unit of inquiry, files that go together in one manner. And the way that this is different from a folder is, well, actually, let me create one and then it'll more easily visualize why it's different than a folder. So to make a workspace, I just have to go down here and click on Create Workspace. I need to give it a name like Social Studies. I hit create, and it's going to bring me to a window, there it is, where I can add files. The first thing I want to draw your attention to is you can only have a maximum of 25 files in any given workspace, and I think that's intentional. Again, if you're throwing hundreds of items into a workspace, you're defeating the purpose of organizing. So what I'm going to do right now is add some files by clicking this blue button. and it's going to give me a list of my files that I've accessed recently. I can also go to my Google Drive, and I have access to Google Drives that are shared with me, like the Tech Integrator Drive. So I'm just going to pick a few files at random here to add to my list. So I clicked on 4 files right there. You can see it says I've selected 4. When I hit insert, it's going to bring them over here in a list. Now what I did, this is where that difference from a folder comes in play, I didn't move those files. All I've done is create a shortcut to those files in this workspace. They still exist. So if I draw in files from my drive, from a shared drive, they're still going to remain on their respective drives. This is just a shortcut to easily find a way to those files. So I can either add more files by clicking on add files up here, or if I'm done, I can click on done. And you can see right here, this is my shared workspace. And I can just click on any of those files to open them. I'm sorry, double click on them to open them. Or I can open up the workspace and add or remove files from within here. A couple things that you can do with the workspace, so that way you don't have to keep recreating the wheel every school year. Let's say, this is a social studies unit that I'm doing in October. I have this workspace accessible now. The unit's done. I don't necessarily want it here because if I have several workspaces, again, you create clutter. So I can click on these 3 dots next to the word social studies. And I have a couple options. Rename is fairly obvious. That's if I want to change the name of the workspace. I can hide the workspace, and when I click on that, it moves down below to this space called hidden workspaces, and you can see it's just condensed and all I can see is the name. It moves it out of the way, so that way it still exists and I can bring it back when I need to use it again by clicking on the 3 dots and pick unhide, and it goes back up to the top. The third item on the list is to remove the workspace, and that means delete it. That means that workspace is no longer going to exist. Now, don't worry about what happens to the files in there. Like I said, these 4 files that I put in the workspace still exist in their original homes. These are just shortcuts. So if I remove the workspace, all I'm doing is removing that holder for it. Those 4 files will still exist as they were in their natural habitat, so to speak. So removing the workspace does not delete any of the work that you've done. Just rest assured that that is just a different way of organizing within your Google Drive. So I encourage you all to check it out when you get a chance. The last thing I want to demonstrate here in terms of Google Drive is to do an advanced search. And I will readily admit that searching for things in Google Drive is definitely confusing. It can be complicated and even frustrating at times. So searching for a name of a file doesn't always yield the results that you want, but you can do what's called an advanced search. So when I'm up here in the search box, I can click on this little downward pointing arrow here. And you can see I have some advanced criteria here that I can search for. I can search for a specific file type. So if I know what I'm looking for is a Google form, I can click on this and it'll only show me forms as a result of my search. The next item here is for ownership. I can see, if I know somebody shared a file with me, I can search for that. I can look for files that only I created, ones that were created by somebody else, not me. Or I can even do one for a specific person. Like if I know Julia shared a file with me, I can type in Julia's name, and then my search results will only show me things that were owned and created by Julia. So that's a nice feature. And you can fill in more than one of these criteria if you really need to narrow down your search results. The next one here says location. And that gives me the opportunity to look within my drive, within drives that are shared with me, within folders that are shared with me. And then you can even do some district-wide searches, although that I think kind of defeats the purpose of the advanced search. But you can narrow it down by location. Notice you have 2 other options here. One is in trash. So if you know maybe you might have deleted something, you would want to check this box, because no matter what you do in any of these other criteria, it's never going to bring you back search results of items that are in the trash unless you check in trash. And then you could also have it search for items that have a star. Now, if you take my advice at all, you wouldn't have so many items in your starred folder that you would need to do a advanced search within your starred folder. Some other criteria here that you can search on is the time that it was last modified. You see you have some criteria here, or you can pick a custom date. So you could say, oh, I know I haven't touched that file since March. You can actually click on custom and then set your dates for when you want to have it look in there. You can again search for just part of a name of an item. You can actually search within a file if you know it has certain words within there that are unique. And then there's some other options here. I'll let you explore those on your own. The higher the criteria on the list, the more likely it's going to be useful to your search. So those are the organization tips related to Google Drive. Again, we'll have a Q&A in a little while in regards to this. I'm going to take this moment here to jump over to Gmail. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. Julia, I'm sure, is monitoring that quite well. But we're going to shift gears to Gmail here. So right now I'm in the Tech Integrators Gmail account. And the things that I'm going to demonstrate for you today are to make your inbox more manageable. I've gone and helped some teachers, and they have 450 unread messages, or they have just 3,000 messages in their inbox. And while there is a search box up here, finding things and maintaining things can be extremely difficult. Sometimes you need to be able to move some of these things around just to make your inbox look a little more manageable. It also can be a good stress relief to not see that big number of unread messages just staring at you in the face. So some of the things that you can do to help alleviate this problem is to set up a filter. Like in here in the Tech Integrator box, we have our Tech Integrator YouTube channel. And anytime someone subscribes to the Tech Integrator YouTube channel, we get a message like this one. It's nice to know it doesn't necessarily have to be something that sits in our inbox. So I'm going to create a filter to automatically do a few items with that message so that it moves it. It's still stored, we still keep it, but it moves it to another place so it's not cluttering the situation. So to do that, I go to the gear, which is the settings icon right here. And I need to go down to settings again. And once that loads, I look at my choices across the top here. In this case, I want to create a filter. So I click on filters. And oh, this filter already exists. I forgot to delete it from the last session. There we go. So I'm going to create a new filter by clicking on the link that says create new filter. And so what I want to do is I want to take those messages of new subscribers from YouTube. And so I have to type in the criteria that I'm going to have Gmail look for. You can type in just one of these. You can type in more, keeping in mind that whatever you type in this criteria, the message has to match all of those criteria for the filter to work. So in this case, I know that the email comes from no reply at Yahoo, I'm sorry, not Yahoo, YouTube.com. So any message that matches that, the from field says no reply at youtube.com, will fit this criteria for the filter. So I'm ready to actually tell Gmail what to do. So I'm going to click on create the filter to make that happen. And now I have a list of actions that I want Gmail to execute. One of them is I'm going to have it skip the inbox. There's no reason this message needs to sit in the inbox. I'm also going to have it marked as read. While it's nice to know, that someone subscribed, I don't need that as an unread message. It's not meriting my attention. And then I'm also going to actually have it apply a label, and I'll explain what the labels are shortly. In this case, I have to tell it what label to apply, and I already have a label called YouTube, so I'm going to do that. Then I click this blue Create the Filter button, and I go back to my inbox, and the messages are still there. That filter only takes effect for new messages coming in, not the ones that already exist. But that's okay, because I can organize these as well. So I have these messages here from YouTube that just mention new subscribers. There's a couple ways that I can label them, and the labels are listed over here on the left side of the screen. You can see I have two of them currently. The second one here, this red one, says YouTube. And one way I can apply the YouTube label to messages is just to simply grab the word YouTube, drag it on top of a message, and let go. And you can see it puts that red YouTube label there. Another way to label a message is to check the box on the messages. I can do multiple at one time. I go to the label icon here, move down and check the box for YouTube. And then I have to also check the word apply. And you can see it applied that red YouTube label to those items. Let's create a new label though. Let's say I want to create a label for these breakout emails that came in. What I have to do is go over here to the left side of my screen. I'm gonna need to expand the space here and scroll down all the way to the bottom of this list to where it says create new label. I click that. I want to give this label, I'm going to call it breakout. If I wanted to create like kind of like a sub level of labels, like if I wanted to have YouTube subscriptions, YouTube comments, I could actually go down here and nest a label underneath another one. So that way it kind of is a folder within a folder, so to speak. But in this case, I'm going to leave breakout as a top level label. So I just hit the create button. And when I go back up here to the list, you can see there's the breakout label. It's first alphabetically. So that's why it's at the top of the list. But it's kind of this boring gray color. It's not going to stand out very much. So when I go to the label, I can click on these three dots and go down to the label color. And you can see I can choose from some preset options here, or I can create a custom color on my own combination of different color background and text. In this case, let's go with, let's see, we already have a red and a blue. So I'm going to say red and a green. So how about blue? I will click this blue one. And then just like before, I can grab the breakout label and drag it onto my messages, or I can check the boxes, click on the label icon, and apply it to the messages. So now I have these messages labeled, but they're still here in my inbox. I kind of want them out of the way just to, again, alleviate the clutter. What I can do is check on those messages that are within, that I've already labeled, and that is important for this step I'm about to do. And archive them. The archive button is right here, this box with a downward pointing arrow. And what the archive does is it takes the messages out of your inbox and creates folders or labels. Labels is the terminology Gmail uses, but envision it like a folder where your messages are going to go. When I click archive, those messages are now gone from my inbox, and I'll show you where they are in a second. But this is extremely important. Do not archive a message until you have applied a label to it. Because if I were to check one of these and hit archive, it goes into some sort of Gmail limbo that we don't know where it exists. It's not deleted, and I still could find that message if I knew what to search for up here. But archiving a message without applying a label, it can create a little bit of havoc and a little bit of stress for you. So be very careful and make sure that you apply a label first, and then you can archive it. And then when I archive it, like those three breakout messages, all I have to do is click on the word breakout here, and it'll show me those messages that have been archived. Again, it's like a folder. It brings it off of the inbox, but those messages still exist. So you don't have to delete things to make space in your inbox. You can just apply a label and then click the archive button to demonstrate how, to move that away and create less clutter. Makes your inbox much more manageable. You can do some other things with labels. I mean, I demonstrated the breakout one there. You could have one maybe for emails that come from the district's benefits office, or those pay stubs that you receive, the emails that way. You could have a filter for parents. A label for parents. And that way you get those things out of your way, but they still exist. They're still there. They're still going to come up in your search results. They're just not right there in front of you the whole time, and it makes your inbox much more manageable. A couple more things I'm going to show you related to Gmail, and they are actually in the settings. The first one is if you've taken our course on Google Hangouts, you'll notice that over here on the left side of the screen, I have Google Meet, but also the Google Chat, which functions as Google Hangouts down here. Now, if I have a lot of Google Hangouts in here, or actually if I have a lot of labels up here, I want to be able to have more space so that I can see without having to scroll as frequently as I do. So one of the settings that exists is you can move this Google Meet and Google Hangouts over to the right side of your page. And to do that, I click on the gear. And again, I go to settings. And this is actually one of the advanced settings. So you need to look for the word advanced. And the fourth item down says right side chat, and that needs to be enabled. When I do that, I click save, and it will reload my inbox. And now you can see my Google Meet and my Google Hangouts are over here on the right side of the page. And if I had a lot of conversations here in Google Hangouts, it would actually list much more of them down the side. But what you'll also notice is I have much more room for my labels and other Gmail functions here on the left side. It's taken away a little bit of space from the middle here, but that's not a big deal. So I'll do that one more time just to demonstrate where that was. I hit the gear, I hit the settings, it's under advanced, and you want to have the right side chat enabled. If I want to move it back to the left, I just disable it. One more option here in Gmail to change the settings, and that is to give what's called a priority inbox. And to do that, again, I go to the gear, I go down to the settings, and this time I want to click on inbox. Right now, the way the inbox was set up was just the default Gmail inbox. If I click here and switch it over to priority, you can see it gives me some options here, what's available and not available. I'm going to leave it as what is suggested because I think that actually is a good method for this. Again, I have to go down and save the changes. It'll reload my inbox. And now what I have here are some messages broken out by category. First part of my priority inbox is anything that's important, which is this yellow flag, and anything that's unread. So the unread messages automatically go to the top. That way it makes it harder to miss something. If you've received a lot of new emails within the past day, it moves the unread messages to the top. Anything that I've starred, and the star kind of works similar to that in Google Drive, it just kind of serves as a reminder for something you definitely want to access again. You have this section for starred, and then I have a section that is labeled everything else. What's nice about this, though, is because these are broken out like this with the little caret there, I can collapse those sections. So that way, if I'm presenting to my class or doing a presentation like I am now, I can collapse my email and actually have my screen up like this without necessarily revealing anything that might have been sensitive or something that might have been private to someone else. You can collapse and expand these easily just for privacy issues. So that is the extent of my portion of the presentation on Google Drive and Gmail. Julia, is there anything in the chat that needs reviewing or anything of that nature?
Our former colleague Jackie had a great question that I thought we could talk out between us, Randy.
Okay.
So she said, would you suggest basically converting any sort of folders that you have, like you talked about the IB units, to a workspace? Basically, what are the pros and cons of that?
Well,
go ahead. If you want to go for it, you can.
I mean, the pros and cons would be, you saw the workspace had a max of 25 items. So if you have more than 25 items in your unit of inquiry folder, that's going to be a hang up for you. But the pros would be those items. It's much easier to find that way. If you have the 6 priority workspaces for your 6 units of inquiry, and that way you could hide and move them as you progress through them. I think overall, as long as that I don't hit that cap of 25, I would definitely go with a workspace. Julia, what's your comment on that?
So my thought is folders are like the maximum level of organization, right? Because you can do subfolders within a folder. I would think on the lowest level of organization would be a starred file. And then kind of in the middle, I think of that priority workspace. So I guess if I had my folders like Jackie's saying for her units of inquiry with some subfolders in there, I would probably let that be. I bet you did a lot of work to just get that in that good organized space for you. I personally think of the priority workspace as something that you need to get to pretty often, but it should still have some sort of common theme. So I'm thinking like, okay, if I'm working in my school, I'm always looking at the phone directory Google Doc, right? I got to figure out whose phone numbers and whose room numbers are what. Maybe I also have my lunch and recess duty doc, and then something else like my principal's weekly bulletin. I'm looking at those files probably on a daily basis. That's what I think of for that priority workspace. But something like a unit that I'm going through weeks at a time and I spent a lot of time organizing, I personally would keep that in a folder.
Well, and there's nothing to say that the files can't exist in both places.
That is very true.
So if you have like some high flyers within your unit and they're all within the folder for that unit, you could still use a workspace. So
yeah,
it's very flexible. Good question, though.
Okay, another colleague, Kim, has a question. She said, could you repeat the directions to set up the mailbox setting to sort important and unread, starred, and everything else? So I think the priority workspace. Can you just show that again, Randy?
No. Oh, okay. So that's here under the gear. We'll go to settings, and that's in the inbox. And right now, your Gmail probably is set at default. Um, by definition, it should be at default. So then I just click on, once I'm in the inbox settings, I just click on here and go to priority. And you even have some flexibility within here. This initial setup that they give you is one I actually like, so I don't mess around with this, but you're welcome to take a look at what the categories are as well. And then, of course, you have to scroll down and make sure you click on save. Otherwise, it's not going to take effect.
Okay, perfect. And then Randy and I do have a follow-up email where we gave our best directions to go over everything that we demoed today. So look for that in your email if you want to review in addition to this video. Okay, I think those are the only questions that I saw for your session, Randy.
Okay.
So,
If any Gmail or Drive questions come up, you can still type them into the chat, but I think, yeah, we'll turn it over to Julia now.
okay. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen. And I also am going to start in the Tech Integrator Gmail account. Can you see that, Randy?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so my portion of the session is on one of my favorite apps, Google Keep. Google Keep is Google's note-taking app, and it's cloud-based, which makes it awesome for personal and professional use. No matter if I'm on my phone, if I'm on my computer, I can always get to those notes on Google Keep. So the first thing is, how do you access Google Keep? Well, here on your Gmail account, if you have this little main menu showing, you're going to notice that there's a keep icon over here on the right-hand side. It's this yellow icon with a light bulb. You can also access Google Keep from the waffle. So if I'm in my Gmail and I click on the waffle, I'm going to scroll down and find Keep. Again, it's this app here. It's yellow with a light bulb. Just so you know, there is also an app for Google Keep. It's available for Android and iOS devices if you're interested in using this as an app. So let's take a look right now at my Google Keep. You'll notice that I have already taken some notes, and those are the 3 notes that you see right here. I have a note for our Real Techsperts podcast. I have a to-do list, and I also just have this media account right now. And you'll notice that they visually look different. Over here on the right-hand side, this media account just has a green background to make this note stand out for me. These 2 notes over here, I actually added an image, and the image acts like a header. So at the top of the note is that image, giving me that visual, telling me what the note is about. So let's go ahead and learn how to change the color as well as add an image to a note. At the top right here, you'll see it says take a note. So I'm going to click to begin a new note. And the first step to change a color is pretty easy. All you need to do is click here on the paint icon, and you have just a small number of colors to choose from. So I can go ahead and choose one of these colors, and the background of that note changed colors. Then if I gave this note a title, it's really going to visually stand out from all of my other notes because it now has that blue color. The next thing I want to demonstrate for you is how to add an image. Now, I'm going to add an image that I will be sharing with you all in our follow-up email. I actually went ahead and made some headers with common terms or things that I think you would use as a staff member here in Racine Unified. So to add that image as my note header, I'm going to click on this square with a mountain. This allows me to add the image. I need to quickly find this. I have it in my drive, and I called it Keep Headers. So I will find that for me. And here's what I'm talking about. So right now, I'm going to select this image and hit open. So what I did was I typed phrases like email, homework, to do, and I added a little symbol next to them. So now that I know this note is all about emails. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill in this note right now. If I click here where it says take note, by default, it's going to start with this. So you would just simply type in some text here, and it's all going to condense into sentences and paragraphs. And that's a fine option, but what I really like to use is the checkbox feature. I like creating notes, seeing things listed individually, and then being able to check them off of my list. So in order to see these check boxes, I'm going to click on the 3 vertical dots and choose Show Checkboxes. Now you'll notice this little plus sign, and this is where I'm going to begin to type my first thing that I need to do. I need to email a weekly newsletter. So I type that in as text, and you'll notice that it changed to a checkbox. Okay, let's go ahead and add something else. So I'm going to click on that plus sign again, and let me scroll down a little bit so you guys can see. Oops. Here we go. So I'm going to start typing again, and as soon as I start typing, that checkbox is going to appear. So I need to email the podcast schedule. Now, if you want to continue doing this, but you want the next item on your note to be indented, you can click underneath, and then on your keyboard, you're going to hold down the Control button and the right bracket. And when I do that and I type some more text, this checkbox has now been indented in right. You can kind of notice that it's going to be almost like a sub note within this podcast schedule. So I can just write something like end of year. Okay, so if I close this note, you'll now notice that it has that header at the top, and I can visually see those checkboxes, the things that I need to do. Now let's say that I want to share this note. This is a really nice option if you want to attempt to finish a task together, maybe with a colleague, maybe with a student. You can go ahead and click on this button right here for collaborator. And I can type in the name or email address of someone. So let's share this note with Randy. And I'll select Randy from the list. And then I need to click on the checkbox, or check mark, I should say, in order to add his name. Then I'll go ahead and click Save. And I can see that Randy has been added as a collaborator. Down here, his picture appears, so I know he's been added. Now, Randy has the ability to go in and add some items to our note. He could also check them off. And once Randy makes a change to this note, on my side, the note is going to gray out. It's going to have a darker color to it. And that's just Google Keep's way of letting you know that someone has made a change to this note. So it's not like other Google apps where we can go and see the version history. In Google Keep, it just gives you that darker color, letting you know someone has gone in and added or changed the note. Again, this is a really great feature when you're working with colleagues. Maybe the team of you need to get something done and you guys can all have that note in front of you. Let's go ahead and check some things off of our note. So to do that, I'm going to click where it has the checkbox. And you'll notice that when I check something, it goes down to the bottom here and it shows in a completed section. So that check mark appears as well as a line through the item, but it still exists. If you wanted to delete the item from your list completely, you would just need to hover over that item and then click on the X to delete it. Another option you have up here at the top is to rearrange the items on your checklist. So when I hover over something, you'll see these little dots right here called a handle. If I grab that handle, I can actually click and drag to rearrange the order. Because I indented that, it's not going to work very well. On top of rearranging the items, you can also delete the items. Again, just hover over on the top and then click on the X to delete that item. Okay, I'm going to close this out right now. And the last thing that I want to show you here on the desktop version of Google Keep is how you can pin a note. So you'll notice at the top of the note, you have this little push pin icon. If you pin the note, it's going to force it to the top of your list. That way it's another visual knowing that this note is important. You won't have to scroll through all of your other notes. Instead, it will be right here at the top. You can also unpin the note by clicking on that pin, and it will just go back into its regular order. So I mentioned before that there is an app version to Google Keep. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to stop presenting on my computer and I'm actually going to present from my phone so that you can see me use the app from my phone. So you're just gonna have to bear with me here when I do that switch. Give me 1 second. Okay, can you hear me, Randy?
Yep.
Okay. So here I am on my phone, and you'll notice that I have the Google Keep app. So I'm going to go ahead and open up that app. And I told you that I use the app personally and professionally. So in the top right corner of the app right now, I'm signed into my RUSD Gmail account. And I know that because I see my avatar. I can click on that avatar and see that here's my RUSD Gmail account. If I wanted to switch to my personal account, all I would have to do is click on my personal email address. So that's really easy for me to switch between the two accounts. So we're going to stick here in my RUSD Gmail account. And you'll notice I added all of those headers to make it nice and visually appealing. One thing that I really like to do with the app is to add location-based reminders. So I'm going to go ahead and open up one of my notes, this home note. So I'll click on it. And you can see that on my home note, I need to buy Clorox wipes. And I don't want to forget about that. So when I actually get to the grocery store, I'm going to set up a location-based reminder so that Google Keep will remind me to buy these Clorox wipes. To do that, I'm going to click on the bell icon in the top right corner. Now you need to have your settings allow your location. So I've already done that. What I need to do now is click on pick a place, and I can begin typing in the name or address of a store that I shop at. So I'll type in pick and save, and then I can choose the pick and save that I want to shop at, and then click on the check mark in the top right corner. And now you'll notice underneath the words buy Clorox wipe, you'll see the word pick and save there. So again, what this means is as long as I'm connected to Wi-Fi or I'm connected to my cellular service, when me and my phone enter this specific location of pick and save, Google Keep is going to open up and remind me that I need to buy Clorox wipes. This is something that you might use in your personal life. I also use it professionally. I work at 5 different schools, so I have a keep for each one of my schools. And I have those locations set up, meaning when I walk into Gifford on Tuesday, my Gifford Keep pops open on my phone and it tells me everything that I need to do at Gifford for that day. Don't forget you can add collaborators to your Google Keep. That's a really powerful feature. That means if I'm at Pick and Save and I'm buying those Clorox wipes and I've shared this note with someone at my house and they open up the refrigerator and realize, hey, we're out of milk, they can add milk to the list and it will be updated in real time. So that as I'm going down those aisles of Pick and Save, I'm seeing, hey, something new was added to my Google Keep. So it's a really powerful tool. I'm going to stop praising Google Keep right now and switch back over to my device. So give me a second to do that switch.
For those of you who are curious here, Julia was able to present because she's installed the Google Meet app on her phone, and then she was able to present from her phone with that Google Meet. But now I hear her coming back, so I will turn it back over to her.
Okay, that was probably the smoothest I've done so far, Randy, of my
Yes,
switching.
I'm applauding. You just can't hear it.
Thank you. Okay, so like I said, I really love Google Keep, but it is time to switch over to our next and final app that we're going to demonstrate today, and that is Google Sheets. So I talked about checkboxes in Google Keep, and today I want to show you how to add checkboxes to Google Sheets. In addition to those checkboxes, I'm going to show you some more time-saving tips within Google Sheets, because let's be honest, Google Sheets can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes. So what you'll see on my screen right now is a list that I have started. I can use this list digitally here in Google Sheets, or I could also print this off. But Basically, the idea is you are able to create any sort of list that you want using Google Sheets. So here in column A, you're going to see that I gave some numbers. So my students are assigned a number, and I want to save myself some time rather than typing in number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on. I can actually copy that pattern and have Google Sheets do the numbering for me. So in order to do that, in a numbering case, you need to have two values in the list. And once you have those two values, you're going to click and select, and you'll notice this blue square in the corner appears. I'm going to grab that blue square and continue dragging down this column. Oops, I let go too soon. But wherever you let go, you'll notice that the number pattern continued for you. So let's see if I can do that again. Grab the blue square, continue dragging all the way down and let go. Again, wherever I let go in that cell, the pattern is going to stop. So that's a nice time-saving trick for you. Rather than manually typing in those numbers, I can just select the first two, grab that blue square in the right-hand corner, and drag it down to continue the pattern. In column B, you'll notice that I have the word student, and I just want student to be a placeholder. I'll type their names in later, but I want student to, again, be applied all the way down column B. So I can select this cell with the word student, grab that blue square in the corner, drag it all the way down, and wherever I let go, it's going to apply that pattern. In this case, it was just one text. Okay, so now let's get to the nice part, those check boxes that I talked to you about. I want to be able to mark off in column C if a student has completed something, so I need to insert a checkbox. So the first thing I need to do is click and select where I want the checkboxes to appear. You'll notice that I've selected column C and there's that light blue color on top. At the top of my toolbar, I'm now going to click on the word insert, go almost down to the bottom and choose checkbox. And now those checkboxes have appeared. You could leave them blank as is, and then when you go to print this off on paper, you would obviously use a pen and fill in those checkboxes. But you can also fill in the checkboxes digitally. The first way to do that is to just simply click on the cell. When I click on the cell, a check mark appears. If you're going to check off a large number of items, you could click and drag on top to select all of the cells. And then on your keyboard, you can actually use the space bar. When I click the space bar, you'll notice all of those have been filled in with a check mark. If you want to uncheck those items, click on the space bar again, and they are unchecked. So manually, just by clicking on the box, it will add the check mark, or you can select and then use the space bar to either check or uncheck groups. Let's do that one more time. We're going to add those check boxes. This time I'm going to click and drag to select the area I want the check boxes to appear. At the top, I need to click on Insert, Checkbox, and now those blank check boxes have been added. If you want to change the font color, that will also change the checkbox color. So let's say in column D, I want these check boxes to appear in a different color. I'll select them, go up here to the paint bucket. Oh, I'm sorry, the A for the text. And then if I choose orange, you'll notice that the check boxes are now orange. And when I fill these check boxes in, the check mark is filled in with orange. So checkboxes is one way that you can use Google Sheets to create lists. I'm going to continue giving you some more tips here in Google Sheets. The next thing that I like to do is add alternating colors. Now, alternating colors are going to make your your list look a little bit more pretty, but it's also going to help you visually. And I think you'll see that when we add alternating colors. So what I need to do is select the range. Once it has that blue color on it, that means it's selected. At the top, I'm going to click on Format, and down at the bottom, I'll choose Alternating Colors. Now, when I do that, over here on the right-hand side, I have some options. Here are some default colors, gray, and then all of these colors here. I'm going to choose this darker gray color. And you'll notice that the header or the topics, in my case, row 1, is going to be a dark color. And then after that, each row is going to be alternating between a light and dark shade. And that's that visual help so that I can see my data. I could go and manually change these colors here, but for now, this is fine. And all I need to do is click Done. When I deselect my data, you'll notice that those alternating colors have been applied. Again, row 1 is my header, that's that dark color. And then every other row has either that light gray color or a white. And that breaks up my students so that I can easily see their data going across in rows. The next thing that I'm going to show you how to do is to freeze a column or a row. So for my example, I want to freeze column A and B. That means I always want the student number and the student name to stay frozen or stay as is. And then I want columns C through F to move. Let me show you how that looks. So let's go ahead and select column A and B. At the top, I'm going to click on View, Freeze, and in this case, I want these 2 columns. So when I click here, you'll notice now that column A and column B are separated by this darker line because they're frozen. So now when I'm entering my student data or I'm filling in those check boxes, I'm going to use my horizontal scroll down here at the bottom. And when I grab and move my horizontal scroll to the right, you'll notice column A and B stay as is, and the rest of my columns move. That means I can move all the way over here to see the Flipgrid column, and then I see my student name and number directly next to that. It would be really easy for me to type in that grade and then move down the list so that I know I'm matching up the correct student with the score. So again, all I did was select, I went to View, Freeze. You could do rows, but in my case, I did columns. So I hope you play around with Google Sheets. I hope it's not as intimidating for you if you use these little tips that I showed you, and hopefully you can use it in whatever role you play in RUSD. So that is the end of my part of the presentation. It looks like we have some time left for Q&A, so I'll ask Randy about that.
Right now we are up to date in the chat, but if anybody wants to type another question in there, we'll be glad to answer it for you as best we can.
Oh, one more thing I forgot to show them, Randy. We are going to have a freebie, I guess you would call it, or a template that we'll send in our follow-up email. I'm showing that on my screen right now. So basically what I did is I added some just generic information with the check boxes already there for you. And hopefully you can fill this in and make it useful. So here's sheet 1. You could add student names on column A, and then I have some titles running across the top row here. Sheet 2 is just a more simplified version. And then sheet 3 is the wow factor with the rainbow. Lots of bold colors here. But again, we'll send this to you in an email so you can have your own copy and hopefully start using the check boxes.
I'll respond to Jackie's question in a second here out loud while you're doing this. Kimberly's asking if you can do the alternating color step again, please.
Mm-hmm.
So while Julia's getting ready for that, Jackie, yes, you'll be getting a copy of those images that Julia shared on the Google Keep as part of
Yep.
the email.
So what I have to do is select where I want the alternating colors to appear. Let me actually just do it over here for a demonstration. And then up here at the top of my tools, I need to do Format, Alternating Colors. On the right-hand side, you have some predetermined colors. You can just select one of those and then hit Done, and you'll notice the colors have been applied.
And what's nice there is if you add more rows, it's going to automatically apply those colors. Evelyn asked, can you freeze only one cell? I don't think you can freeze one cell. You can freeze entire rows or entire columns, but not just an individual cell.
Correct.
Anyone else have a question? Oh, there are more questions. I just need to scroll down. All right, so Shelly is saying she has trouble figuring out how to keep accounts separate between personal and school. That's really kind of a Google Chrome type situation here. If you want to shoot an email out to whoever your tech integrator is, Shelly, I'm sure they'd be able to give you some tips on that. Um, I don't know that that necessarily falls into the parameters of today's demonstration. And then Jackie's saying, are they editable? Oh, are your Google Keep images editable, Julia?
No, they are not. They are just PNG images, so they can't change. But Jackie, shoot me an email if you want me to create something specific for you, or I can show you how I made them.
For a small fee. Anybody else have a question out there? Please type it into the chat. Otherwise, if you've had your fill of today's session, you are welcome to exit at any time just by closing the tab browser. And again, we'll send out an email with some resources and a link to the video shortly. Oh, let's see. There's another question in here. Kim's asking, how do I get keep or task to show up while I'm in Gmail? Do you want me?
There's like a little arrow on the very right-hand side of Gmail, and it says hide side panel or show side panel. It's the very bottom right-hand corner. It's like a little arrow, and that will show you those options like calendar, keep, and tasks.